Hi, welcome to Simply Current Affairs. Today is day one of Editorial Analysis and Answer Writing Initiative. So today we have taken an interesting editorial topic from the Business Standard. The editorial deals with flexible inflation targeting. To understand this topic, we should have some clarity on basics. So first, let me explain the basics, then we will go into the editorial. We all know Reserve Bank of India regulates banks and banking activities. Apart from that, Reserve Bank of India is entrusted with three important objectives. What are those objectives? Number one, maintain price stability. Number two, stimulate growth. Number three, maintain exchange rate stability. So inflation has to be maintained, growth has to be stimulated, exchange rate also should be maintained stable. Exchange rate means value of one currency in terms of another currency. So value of $1 is equal to 80 rupees. This is the exchange rate that should be maintained stable. So these three are important objectives of Reserve Bank of India. Now, of these three, the most important objective is to maintain the price stability. Inflation should be at control. So, Reserve Bank of India, by using various monetary tools like repo rate, reverse repo rate, CRR, open market operations, there are many tools which are referred as monetary tools. So, RBI using these tools, they will vary the interest rate in the market. By varying the interest rate, money supply in the market can be varied. By varying the money supply, inflation can be controlled or growth can be stimulated. Right? So RBI uses these tools to arrive at these objectives. Till 2016, it was Reserve Bank of India which was solely responsible for using these tools to maintain the prices. So Reserve Bank of India governor, RBI governor will decide, okay, we will increase repo, we will decrease repo. For what? To maintain the prices. But however, in the year 2016, Government of India created a committee. That committee is called as Monetary Policy Committee. This committee will have 6 members. 3 members will be representing Reserve Bank of India and 3 members will be representing Government of India. So this 6-member committee is headed by RBI Governor, who himself is a member of this committee. Right? So this committee will be deciding. So till 2016, RBI Governor alone was deciding. Now this committee will decide whether to increase the repo rate or decrease the repo rate, etc. Objective is, by varying this, ensure inflation is under control. So Government of India created a committee and also Government of India gave a target. So Government of India created a committee and Government of India also gave a target. What target? Inflation target. So Government of India asked this Monetary Policy Committee to ensure that the inflation is within 4% range. So target inflation should be at 4%. This is what Monetary Policy Committee's task. Vary the repo rate, reverse repo rate, ensure inflation is at 4%. But however, Government of India gave some flexibility. So Government of India said, Monetary Policy Committee, it is not necessary that exactly you are targeting 4%. You can target a range. Try to reach 4%, try to maintain 4%, but you can have some range. The range is swinging between 2% to 6%. That means the inflation can go as low as 2% or it can go as high as 6%. So this range was given, this flexibility was given to the committee by the government. That is why this approach is called as flexible inflation targeting. Flexible inflation targeting. So the target is simply 4% plus or minus 2. Right? And also, there are different types of inflation. We would have studied in economics. Which inflation this committee is going to target? Which inflation the committee is going to target? The committee is going to target Consumer Price Index headline inflation. So it is going to target headline inflation. So what is headline inflation? I will explain in a short while from now. So now you understood what is this flexible inflation targeting. This approach was introduced in the year 2016. Now it's been almost 10 years. Now Reserve Bank of India decided to evaluate the efficiency of this flexible inflation targeting approach. So Reserve Bank of India, it conducted a study to study the effectiveness, and it also sought public feedback, public comments on this flexible inflation targeting. So in this backdrop, an IIM professor, he gave his opinion in the form of an editorial in Business Standard. That is what we are going to discuss today. See, his opinion is highlighting the effectiveness of flexible inflation targeting. So if there is a question in UPSC regarding flexible inflation targeting, these points can be directly used. Right. So what is the editorial all about? The editorial discusses the efficiency or the efficacy of flexible inflation targeting by evaluating 4 parameters. See, number 1, the editorial, it starts with direct effectiveness of flexible inflation targeting. It gives an overall picture. The second point, the author is discussing that we are targeting headline inflation. We are targeting headline inflation. Is it okay to continue with headline, or shall we move on to core? That point is also discussed. The third point is we are targeting 4% range. We are targeting 4% plus or minus 2. But 4% is what is the most sought after. It is the most sought after inflation point. But we also have a range 4% plus or minus 2. So forget about this plus or minus 2, whether this 4% is correct. Or shall we move on to 5%? Or shall we move on to 6%? That is also discussed. And fourth point about the range. The range is plus or minus 2. The range is between 2% to 6% currently. Shall we increase it to 1 to 7%? Or shall we bring it down to 3.5 to 4.5%? That means, shall we further widen the range, or shall we reduce the range? So these 4 points are evaluated. So flexible inflation targeting, as I mentioned, was introduced in the year 2016. So almost 10 years is over. According to the RBI study, in this 10 years, the inflation averaged to 4.8%. That means the average inflation rate in these 10 years was 4.8%. See, there were moments the inflation increased to 9%, 10%, then it came down to 1.6% also. But what I'm trying to convey here is, in 10 years, the average rate was 4.8%. Right? So that itself proves that flexible inflation targeting is working effectively, because in the previous decades, the average inflation was very, very high. In this last decade, despite of COVID, despite of Russia-Ukraine war, despite of climate change, erratic rainfall pattern, the inflation was averaged to 4.8%. That itself shows the effectiveness of this flexible inflation targeting. And also RBI conducts a survey. It conducts inflation expectation household survey. That means you and me will be surveyed by the government. I mean, not government, RBI. So RBI will come and ask Guna, tell me, what is your expectation next year? What will be the inflation rate? So RBI will ask. So Guna will say, okay, next year inflation can be 10%. Now RBI will go and ask John, tell me, what will be the inflation for next year? Now John will say it can be 12%. Like that, RBI will be asking the opinion of the public regarding their expectations on inflation in the upcoming year. See, the expectation, the recent survey says public expectation for the next year inflation is somewhere around 8 to 10%. See, when we compare this with previous decades, so previous decades when the survey was conducted, people, when they were saying their expectation was very, very high. So people were saying next year, that means let's assume that in 2010, when people were surveyed, people were saying that what is your expectation? The expectation next year can be 20%, 15%. So in the previous years, decades, the expectations were always high. But now, when we are asking the public's perception is getting changed. Public's expectation is getting changed. Public's confidence over RBI government has increased. See, public will not have any idea about what is flexible inflation targeting. But when you go and ask public, they are saying that, okay, next year the inflation can be 7%, 8%, 10%. So this reduction in that expectation of the inflation, that itself proves FIT is working well. The second point is targeting headlines. See, what is headline inflation? Headline means measuring the inflation of all the items Core inflation means measuring the inflation of items excluding food and fuel. Because food and fuel is highly volatile. Today price will increase, tomorrow price will come down. So remove the food and fuel and then calculate inflation. That is core inflation. What is headline inflation? Take everything into consideration, measure the inflation of all the items. So currently we are targeting headline inflation. Should we continue with this headline inflation? We should continue with this headline inflation. Look at India. See here, majority of the masses are coming under middle class. They come under poor sections. For them, if you look at their consumption expenditure, in a month, 50 to 60% of their expenses goes into food and fuel. See, because of inflation, it is the poor, it is the middle class who will be suffering the lot. If you are going to target core inflation will not give you the picture of impact of food and fuel. By targeting core inflation, we cannot help the poor directly. By targeting headline inflation, the RBI, the Monetary Policy Committee, will understand the role of food and fuel. Accordingly, they will take efforts to control inflation. So, taking the socio-economic structure of our country, we have to continue targeting headline inflation. The third point is whether we have to continue with this 4% or shall we go to 5% or 6%. So, here we will go with RBI. RBI is a very technical body. So, RBI, in its study, they have revealed that for India, for Indian economy, when the inflation is 4%, at that point, India is able to achieve zero output gap. RBI says when India has an inflation, when India has an inflation of 4%, in and around 4%, then the output gap in India will become zero. So what is this output gap? Output gap is potential GDP minus actual GDP. See, GDP means country's income, national income. Okay, potential GDP minus actual GDP. Put it simply, imagine Guna's potential income. Guna can potentially earn 50,000 rupees per month, assume. But Guna's actual income is only 10,000. Guna's potential is 50,000 per month, but Guna is only earning only 10,000. Now the output gap is 40,000 rupees. This is the output gap. But imagine Guna's potential income is 50,000 and Guna is earning 50,000. My potential is 50 and I have met my potential. That is, my potential is 50,000, my actual is also 50,000, then my output gap is zero. So when output gap is zero, when we have zero output gap, that means that country's income has reached its potential. So in India, when the inflation is at 4%, we will be reaching the potential growth. So why we should take risk? Why we have to go to 5% or 6%? Let's continue with this 4%. Right? The next point is range. Shall we continue with this 2 to 6% or shall we widen? What will happen if we widen it to 1% to 8%? What will happen? There will be lethargy. The Monetary Policy Committee, what they will think, even if the inflation is 7%, the committee will say it is within the range only. So why we should worry? But I already said the inflation should be closer to 4%. That's a flexibility given, but we have to bring it to closer to 4%. So when we widen this range, then that will lead to lethargy. Okay, shall we shrink it? Shall we shrink it? Shall we make it like this 3.5% to 4.5%? Shall we shrink it? See, if we shrink, there is no flexibility given only. It becomes very, very difficult. See, we are the import-dependent country. Climatic conditions are becoming erratic. Externalities, geopolitical situation is also not so conducive. So what happens? There will be volatility in the food and fuel prices. So inflation will increase one month, it will decrease another month. So if we are not giving some flexibility for the committee to operate, then again it will be disastrous. Controlling inflation is very important, which should also promote growth parallelly. Right? So some amount of flexibility has to be given to the committee for its effective working. So the author says, let us continue with this 2% to 6% range only. Right? This is the article all about. So the author feels that the flexible inflation targeting in the current form is effective. Let us not disturb it. At the same time, the author is also highlighting some suggestions. See, we have to bring in more transparency in the working of this monetary policy committee. Already, to improve the transparency, effectiveness, there is a section 45 ZN of RBI Act. Section 45 ZN of RBI Act, what it says? It says that for 3 consecutive quarters, that means for 9 months, 1 quarter is 3 months, for 3 consecutive quarters, for 9 months, if the inflation is not within the range, if it is not within this 4 plus or minus 2% range, if the committee is not able to keep the inflation within this range, that means the monetary policy has become ineffective. And the committee, RBI, has to submit a letter to the government. What letter? The letter should cite 3 important points. Number 1, the letter should say why inflation is outside the range. The letter should say when the inflation will be brought back to this range. Number 3, the letter will say how the committee is going to bring the inflation within this range. So already there is one condition under section 45 ZN under which monetary policy committee will tell the reasons, will explain. This brings some accountability, transparency also. Apart from this, the author says the committee, the RBI, they have to come up with more inflation forecast. Even now, RBI comes up with inflation forecast, but RBI should not stop only with forecast, come with forecast. The committee and the RBI should tell that, okay, coming year, this could be the inflation. If this is going to be the inflation, what efforts we are going to take, how we have to tackle, all those things has to be explained to the government, market. So accordingly, everyone will get ready to face the uncertainties. This is very, very important according to the author. Along with this, the author says, see, we can take some best global practices. For example, Bank of Canada, they release an index called as CPI trim. They release an index called as CPI trim. Sir, what is a CPI trim? You know, CPI rural, CPI combined, CPI urban. CPI trim is, see, let's assume there are 100 items, in which onion is one item. If onion price 20 rupees per kg, assume, but suddenly onion price becomes 300 rupees per kg, 450 per kg, then one commodity alone price got increased, extremely increased. That is going to influence the entire index, right? When I say consumer price index, that measures the inflation on most of the commodities consumed by the consumers. One commodity price is increasing drastically, that can influence the CPI value. So Bank of Canada, they are releasing something called a CPI trim, where what they will do, they will cut down, they will trim that extremity. So one commodity, 2 commodity, that alone because of some reason the price has increased drastically, they will cut that increase and then they will calculate the inflation and then they will target. So like this, innovative indexes can be brought in and the government, RBI committee, monetary policy committee can target it. So these are some suggestions given by the author. So I hope you got clarity on the topic which we discussed. Now based on our discussion, I will give you a question. What do you understand by flexible inflation targeting framework in India? Evaluate its efficacy in maintaining macroeconomic stability in the country. This will be a 10-marker question and you are expected to write 150 words. Try to understand this question first. What do you understand by flexible inflation targeting? This is going to be your introduction. In the introduction, you say, explain what is this flexible inflation targeting. We have discussed about the genesis of this flexible inflation targeting. This is a 10-marker. See, for 10 markers, for introduction, you can write 15 to 20 words. Right? In conclusion, again, maximum 20 to 25 words. Only that much you can write for introduction and conclusion. The remaining part will be the main aspect of the question. So here, what do you understand by flexible inflation targeting? So you are going to explain, define what is flexible inflation targeting and explain the genesis. Right? Then evaluate its efficacy in maintaining the macroeconomic stability. Go and find out what is this macroeconomic stability. Macroeconomics includes what? Inflation, national income. Right? So how this flexible inflation targeting is helping us to maintain the macroeconomic stability. Don't write exactly what we discussed in the editorial. You are going to write based on the demand of the question. So focus on flexible inflation targeting and see how this targeting methodology helped us to maintain the macroeconomic stability. That is the next point. Then in the conclusion point, we can give some way forward suggestion how to improve the FIT, flexible inflation targeting. That can be your conclusion. Right, friends, submit your answer to UPSC with gunasir@gmail.com. See, once after submitting the answer, in the comment section, please mention your name and just let us know that you have sent an email. Say, for example, hi sir, Guna here, I have sent an email. Right, and also give your feedback. If you want to share anything about flexible inflation targeting, you can very well share in the comment section as well. Right, see you tomorrow with another interesting editorial topic. Till then, bye. Take care. See you from Guna Mathivanan.